Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial we are going to make a very basic FPS game. I'm just looking here, I've opened the wrong version of Unity. That one, I think. So that was Unity 5.5, yeah, this is Unity 2017. So we're going to create a new, a very basic 3D game. We're going to have some shooting, so I'm going to go new project, and I'm going to call this so basic FPS, and I'm going to put it in this folder here. It's a 3D game. I'm not going to put in any packages, etc., but we will be using one extra one, but we'll do that in a few minutes. So we'll create project, and we'll start with a basic Unity game with a blank canvas. So the first thing we need to decide is what's our platform, so what's our game for. And in this example here we're just going to make it for PC, so we don't need to change anything. The game that you're going to make for me is going to be for web, so you will have to change the platform, but we'll deal with that another day because we're going to make a WebGL game. So our basic setup here is going to be something like we constructed in class, which is going to make a basic ground plane. I'm going to put a cube on it, so let's start with that. So we'll get rid of close that tab. And so over here we're going to just add some basic components. So we're going to add a 3D plane, and we'll call this our ground. And we'll scale it up a bit, so we'll make it, say, we'll scale it up by 2, so it's a little bit bigger. And we're going to create a 3D cube. Now, it's because the ground was selected, it's inside it, so we don't want that, so it's going to drag it out. I'm going to rename this target 1. And I'm going to move it over here by I and move it up a little bit. Now, it's inherited the same scale as the ground because it was in the ground, so I'm just going to reset this to a scale of 1 and 1. So that's fine. So we have a target and we have a ground. Now we want to bring in our player. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go import package characters, because we're going to bring in a rigid body FPS controller. So this is a pre-made prefab that Unity has to enable us to make first-person games and third-person games. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we'll use a tool that they've already made for us, which is great. Now, as soon as this is imported, we'll have a standard assets folder, and we'll go grab the prefab from there. We'll also delete the camera that we have, that we can see here is what we're looking at, as the prefab we're bringing in has a camera built into it. So let's take this camera here, press the delete key, and we have a no camera here. So we're going to open up our standard assets. We're going to go to characters, first person characters, prefabs, and then this is the one that we want. So rigid body FPS controller. So drag and drop that in here. You can see I've got a new view because I have a camera. And we'll just have a quick look at this in orthographic mode. And I'm just going to lift it up a little bit so that when I press play, the rigid body will fall to the ground. Oh, I'm on full screen, but I don't want to go. If the rigid body was under the ground, I would fall forever. So we'll turn off maximize on play there. Okay, so we have our kind of our basic setup here, whereby we have a target, a character, and a ground plane. Now obviously if we're making a game, we want to make that more beautiful and add in a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. So we're going to start by bringing in one or two scripts, and we'll explore them. So the first one we're going to bring in is this script here. Now we've used this in class, so I'm going to open it very quickly so you can have a look at it. And it's a simple enough script. So it says that there is a camera. So we have a prefab camera, and or not prefab, sorry, a variable camera. And down here we're going to raycast, and we're going to raycast from the camera. So in effect what that means is, if this is my camera here, the raycast will come straight out of the center of the camera right down the middle of the screen. Now I could load in a game object, like say an empty, that was at the top of a gun, and I could raycast from the top of that gun. So I can raycast from any object. But as we're looking around, we want to fire right in the middle of the screen. So we're going to raycast from the center of our camera. We're going to give our raycast, which will be our gun or our firing, and give it a range. And then when we hit an object, we're going to inflict damage. And the damage we're going to inflict is a damage with a value of 1. And then we have a score. So if we hit that object, we're going to get a score. Now, we talked about this in class. This is a static variable. So this is going to be accessible to all objects in the game, or all scripts. We'll be able to reference this variable here called score. So we're going to have a piece of text on our head-up display, and that piece of text will be able to find this number here. So as we change the score, as we hit things and our score increases, other scripts will be able to access this static variable. So this part of the script is basically saying, if I press the button fire, run this function, shoot, and then voila, that's shoot. So the first part of this has 2 components, or 3 components really. So I declare a variable called raycast, and the raycast hit is basically where the ray we're going to cast touches an object with a collider, and we're going to call that point in 3D space, or that event is going to be called hit. And now we're going to say, if the raycast, the physics raycast, sent from this object here, from the position of the camera, forward, which means positively on the z-axis, and then we're going to say, if from that there's a collision, a raycast hit, within the range, and if the object that we hit has the tag ME. So not only do we have to hit something with a collider, the object that has the collider must also have a tag. Now further to that, what we're also saying down here is, on the object that we hit that has the tag ME, look for this script called target. So it basically says, if the object that I hit, so the raycast hit, if the object that I hit has this script target, get component target. So if target is true, then target dot take damage. Now take damage is so we're in a function here called shoot. On the other script is called target. It's going to have a function on it called take damage. So we're basically telling Unity that if we fire our raycast out and we hit another object and it has the tag ME and it has a script called target, to run the function on that script which is called take damage, and that will inflict damage to what we hit. And in addition to that, so after all that's done, score plus plus. So this variable here, score plus plus, is +1. So we're going to get 1 score, and we're going to send damage to the object that the raycast hits. And the amount of damage is 1. Okay, so that's what that script does. So let's just, we'll minimize mono develop. So we're going to take this. Now, the way this is written actually could go on any object, but it makes sense to put it on the character, because it's the raycast that the character is going to use. Now, this is interesting. Down here it's giving me a compiler error. It's saying you can't use this script. The reason I have a compiler error is, you can see here there's bits in red. It's saying that this script here is referencing another script called target and a function in that script called take damage, and these do not exist. So that's fair enough, so it won't compile. So we need this other script. Voila. So there is my script target, and you'll see this, oops, disappear, because now this does it's referencing this script, and this script now does exist. So let's take this and drag it onto my controller. So now it'll happily sit on, and it's asking me for the whereabouts of my camera, which is here. So I'm going to drag and drop the camera into there. Now, this is my target, and I'm going to put my target script on my target. There it is there, and my target now has a health of 2. We'll very quickly look at the script here. So, this script here, called target, we have a variable called health. So we're giving our target a variable or a health of 2. Now if we're inflicting a damage of 1 when we fire, that means that this object will have to be shot twice before its health is 0. We're saying here, so take damage. This is what we were referring to earlier. So this is the function that that's going to run when it's hit by the ray. And the amount of damage it's going to take is, so health minus amount, and the amount is this amount here. Now what's going to happen then is if my health value is below a value of 0, I'm going to run this function here called die, and die basically is void die destroy game object. So that's basically end the object that this script is on. Okay, so let's see if this will work. We have our target with health 2, and we have our camera setup with our raycast. So we'll press play, and what should happen is if we turn and face it, now we've no way of knowing if it's exactly in the center, but let's try and place the cube in the center, and we left click once and then left click a second time and see if our cube disappears, and it doesn't. Now the reason it doesn't is because we haven't added our tag. So one of the conditions of it working was that we raycast and we hit it, but it also had the tag ME. So let's go fix that. So let's take our target and create a tag. So there's no generic tag called ME, so we have to go add tag. Our list is empty, so we'll hit plus and we'll type in the name of our new tag. And you can have as many tags as you like. So I'll go back here to target 1. It's still untagged, but now this is in our list ME. So we'll press play again and see if it works. So we will turn and face and see if we shoot it once and then shoot it a second time, and there it's disappeared. So our scripts work in a very basic way, but we've also got a score and we want to display that score. So how we do that is we're going to add in a UI canvas. So I'm going to right click here and go UI, and I'm going to add in a button. Now I could just add in text, but the button has a background built into it, so it'll make it easier to read. So I'm going to add in my button. I'm going to rename this score, because that's what I'm going to put on it. Now I can't see the button, so let's just double click on the canvas and zoom out. So our button has been added down here, so it's off the canvas. So I'm going to take my button here and just lift it up, and as I raise it here in the editor, you can see it coming up here. So when I place it in my canvas in the editor, that's how it appears in front of the camera. Now when I click on the canvas, there's a couple of things I can do. I can say constant pixel size, so it will count the number of pixels from the top and from the side and keep it at that, or I can say scale with screen size, which is what I'm going to select. So now if I go maximize on play, it will be up here at the top, and if I don't, if I just press play now, it will be where it should be here. So it scales as the canvas scales, and that can be great if you're moving from platform to platform, from a phone to a computer to a web browser or something. Okay, so now we want to see the score on our canvas. So we need another script. So we're going to bring in this one here called Text Manager. Again, we use this in class today. So Text Manager is a very simple little script. So that's it there. Whoops. So we'll just open this in MonoDevelop. Have a very quick look at it. So I think I changed this just at the end of class just to sort of show how it works. So the button here has inside it a text field. So this is called text. It has a panel here, a component called text, and then the actual text itself, if I type in hello, this is a text, so it's a text field inside a text panel, which can be a bit confusing. So in the script I've said there's a text panel and I've called it null. So I'll have to drag this text into my variable, and I've said go get that component, go get the text panel called null. And then down here I've said we made a public static variable in the control in the raycasting script called score. So I'm saying go get that number and put it into this variable. And then the panel has inside it a text field. In that text field put the word score space and this variable, and that variable has our score number in it, which at the moment should be 0 when we start the game. So let me just minimize that. So this has to go on the text field. So we'll put there, or not the text field, on the text component. And we can see it, well, it can go on. So we'll just drag and drop that there. So text management, or text manager. So now when I press play, it should remove the word hello, yeah, and we've got a score of 0. And when I shoot the box, I've got a score of 1. And when I shoot the box a second time, I've got a score of 2. So that's the score working and a health system for the non-player character working. So both of these are excellent, so they're fully kind of functional. We may add in 1 or 2 more things here just to make things a little easier. So I'm going to add in I'm going to bring in this here. We did this in class as well. So this is an image to crosshairs. I'm going to change it from being the default type, which is a normal texture, to being a sprite that I can use on the UI, the user interface. I'm just going to hit apply here. Now over in my canvas, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go UI, add image. And I've got this white square in the middle. And the image has no sprite. So I'm going to drag and drop my crosshairs in here. So now I've got this large crosshair in the middle, and I'll reduce this to say 25. And now I've got a nice small crosshairs in the center of the frame. So now when I go to play, I can now see if I have actually placed the raycast on top of the cube. That makes it more, more like a game. So now the next thing I want to add is another script, and that script is called timer. So again, have a little look at the timer script. We'll open that in monodevelop. There we go. Now, hopefully all that stuff, the red stuff, will disappear. Yeah. So what I've done here is I've created a variable. I've gone as a float, and this is the name of it, and it's got a value of 30, and those 30 are going to be 30 seconds. So I've said time left. So time left minus equals time.delta time. Time.delta time is just normal time. So I'm basically minusing time as it passes from 30. So as each second passes by, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this will go 30, 29, 28, 27. So if I put in plus equals, I'd be going 31, 32, 33, 34, etc. So minus equals is subtract. And then very simply I've said in update, if time left is smaller than 0, so if all my 30 seconds are gone, load scene MM. Now I don't have a scene called MM, which is meant to stand for main menu, but we'll go make that in a minute. I'm going to change this 30 just for convenience to 5, so we don't have to wait for 30 seconds for things to happen. So I'm going to save that and go back over here. Now where do I put this? Well, this is only dealing with time, so it's non-specific to any object. So I'm going to right click here and create an empty, and that empty, we did this before in previous games we've made. I'm going to call it level controller, and I'm going to put my timer script on this here. Now, we haven't saved this scene, so I'm going to go File, Save Scene, and I'm going to call this scene that we're on here, we're going to call this level 1, because we're very original. And then we're going to create a new scene, so I'm going to go File, New Scene, and this new scene that I've created I'm going to call MM for main menu. So Save Scene, we'll call this MM, 2 capital M's. Now there's nothing on this scene, it's just an empty world. So let's press play. So we're playing the game. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and nothing has happened. Now why has nothing happened? Well, in order to move from one scene to another or access scenes, we have to tell Unity what scenes we want to use. So we've got build settings, and it says scenes in build, and there's nothing there. So I'm going to go add the open scene, which is our level 1, and then I can drag main menu, MM, in here. So if I want to swap between scenes, the scenes must be in this build. If they're not here, they can't be in our finish game. So now I can close this window, and we'll start again. So play the game, so countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and now we've moved into the next scene. Okay, so again, let's have a very quick look at that script. The one little important thing, so I've gone if time is less than 0, scene manager.load scene. So there's one other small thing just to point out to you. You must put this piece of code in. So you have to go Unity or using Unity Engine scene management. That's not loaded in automatically. So if you want to access scenes or change from one scene to another, you must load in this library of information into Unity. Okay, so we've only one last thing to do, which is we can't see the time. So I'm going to take my canvas, and take my score, and I'm going to right click on it and go duplicate. I'm going to rename this, I'm going to call it timer. And I'm just going to move it across here. And why is it turned invisible? That's fascinating. Can I see it on this side? No. Alright, I have no idea why that is not visible, so I'm going to delete it. And then, rather than troubleshoot, I'm just going to cheat, and it's going to go add a button. So there's a button. So that's easier than trying to figure out why the other one didn't duplicate properly. I'm going to move this up, and move it into position. Okay. Aha. And that's probably why I couldn't see the other one, because I am in 3D space. So I'm moving this on the Z-axis, and I shouldn't be. I found the reason. So we'll move that over there. Very good. So I've got, this is going to be my score, so let's just, in the score button here, we'll just put in score, even though that text will be replaced. And we'll do the same here where it says button. We'll call this timer, and then in the text field we'll put in time. Now I don't have another script to control this, so we're going to try and just from the scripts that we have create a add on to this script to make it update the clock. So in my text manager here, excuse me, I have a text. I wanted a text field, so and I needed to load this in to access UI components. So the first thing I need is this. So Control C, and then over here I'm going to add this in. So this is going to be so I can access the UI, and then I declared a variable that was a piece of text. So I'm going to have to do that again. So we have another variable here. Then I said in void start, I said get that component. So Control C, I'll bring that in because I don't have a void start over here. So, and I can have two variables in two different scripts with the same name because they're not static variables. If they were static variables, I'd have to rename them. And then in update, I've put this in. Okay, so so let's do that. So let's go Control C, and down here in my update, I'm going to go Control V. We don't want this to say score, we want it to say time. But what we're doing here in this script is trying to access a variable that isn't in this script, it's in a different script. Whereas here, we already have our variable. So I don't need this line here. So all I need to do is say null.text equals time plus time left. Time left. And this will put our clock that's counting down, that number, we'll put it in here. Okay, so let's save that and press play. Oh, and it hasn't worked. And let's figure out why it hasn't worked. So if we look at our timer here, it's on my level controller and it's not on the text component. So let's remove that from here and drop that onto the text component because it's trying to access this here. Okay. So let's have another look and see why it's not working. So our score, because we put it onto our score. That would explain why. So we put this here onto the text part of the timer. So let's press play. And now we've got our timer, and our timer is counting down, and it works. Very good. Now last thing, that was a huge decimal there. So I'm going to say I'm going to say it's an integer. Now when I do that, we may get an error. So let's not worry about that for a second, but we'll put it in because we want it to be a whole number. So when I go over here, we get an error here. It says cannot implicitly create or convert a float to an integer. Are you missing a cast? So let's go deal with that. So our simple solution to our decimal is this here. So we don't need to change anything in the script, we just need to add in this tiny little bit here. So toString, and then I've put in this bracket here with a 0 in it, which I'll explain now. And basically this converts the float to a string, so to something that's alphanumeric. So this is a string here, so something that has, like if you're putting in your name or your password into a text field, so it just changes it to letters and numbers. So it can display this here, but it's no longer it's no longer a float, it's now a string. So let's press play on that, and you'll see we've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and off we go. And just to sort of highlight what you can do here, so I can go 0.0 and save that, and now I should get 1 decimal place. And you can put in 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places or 4 decimal places, or however much you want to display in your in your clock or in your score, so you have full control over it. So if you wanted to spinning numbers to make it look more dramatic. You can have them there aesthetically if that's what suits you, or we can simply go back to removing these three and have it display simply as an integer. But that's how you can control how many decimal places are displayed in your timer. So that's us. So we're half an hour in. So we've built the whole thing. So half of this we built in class today, and so the addition, the interesting addition, hopefully, is the creation of a second level or a second scene, and then to be able to, in this one, create another UI element, which is a timer, to create a script for that timer that counts us down, and then when we get to 0 we load our new scene, and then to be able to display that timer in our UI so that we can see the time ticking away. And just with these basic components here, so the ability to shoot something and score and the ability to race against time, we have the basic components of a very simple game.